What's up, Camelback fam? What's up? Welcome to another episode of Humble and Hungry, the series where we sit down with entrepreneurs who are building revolutionary ventures in education and technology. I am your host, Lex Lindsay, Senior Associate of Marketing and Communications at Camelback, and I am so excited to have joining me today Tiffany Green, a 2022 Camelback Fellow and the founder and CEO of Uprooted Academy. Tiffany,
Yeah,
welcome.
you. Super excited to be here.
Yes, yes.
Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Just before we even get started, just how are you? How are things going? What's up?
Things are going. I think there's lots going on, especially in the world that we impact. But me personally, I am a new doctoral student, so taking my work into research, trying to navigate travel plans for the end of the year. But living pretty normally, I guess, like most people are. So still going with the mission, still doing well. Still thankful for Camelback and all that they've done and how I get to use them every day. But overall, things are good.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, we're super excited to have you joining us. I'm really excited to just talk about, some of the work that you've been doing with Uprooted, some of the changes that have been happening, and yeah, just to dive into the work. So I know that I quickly introduced you, but I would love for you to share just a little bit more about yourself and the work that you're doing with Uprooted Academy for those who are not familiar.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Uprooted Academy, our sole purpose is to make sure that students, their families, and school counselors are all equipped to navigate the college application journey. Oftentimes, when we look at resources, we see a lot of tools and support to help students discover colleges, and that happens in a lot of ways, from like search tools to even new AI tools to college fairs. And then there's a ton of resources and support and tools to submit the application. But between search and submit, there's a huge gap that needs to be filled. And that gap oftentimes for wealthier students comes in the form of hiring an independent private counselor. But for low income first year students like I was, and students of color, oftentimes we're left out of that. We work really hard, but really wrong, and don't oftentimes get the results needed when applying to college. And so Uprooted Academy serves that gap to ensure that students, families, and school counselors, which you would think have a lot of information, but their master's programs don't tell them the cheat code either of how to get in. And that's not who wealthy families hire. They hire people who go through certification programs and have the funding to do that. And they have this silo of secret. And so our goal is to, not only just offer that secret out to students, but really partner and become a hub of information where we can bring in other organizations that are doing really amazing things too. So making sure our students have a chance. That's the goal of Uprooted.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And it's become even more so critical after, that Supreme Court affirmative action ruling. And so, the work that you're doing has always been important, but it's like even more critical now following that ruling. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the conversation, which I'm excited to get your insights and input on. So thank you for sharing just more about the work that you're doing. I want to take it back to the beginning and talk about what inspired you to even start Uprooted Academy. Where did this idea come from, and what led you to founding your venture?
Yeah, the idea happened by accident. Y'all, was not the entrepreneur that was intentional. This was literally a surprise to me and to you. And so ultimately, COVID happened. So I was working at a high school. My journey post my graduate work, I've worked in higher ed. I worked at, public high schools, and I worked at international high schools. I was living overseas at the time when COVID hit, and ended up back in the US. And as you can imagine, like just like when you're on vacation somewhere outside the US, everything is out of sight, out of mind, right? Like you're just so focused on the impact that you're doing and the work that you're doing or the vacation that you're enjoying that you just forget. And so while I remembered, my stories of working in a public school and what those students were dealing with in terms of college applications, it wasn't as prevalent to me as when I was back in the US, right? So now I'm back in the US and working remote for this high school that was still international. But everybody and their mama was like, Tiffany, we need you to help our students with their college applications. And I'm like, every student? I'm like, I don't have time. Like, this is at a time where not only COVID was happening, but George Floyd, there's like racial tension. Trump was getting ready, like the election was happening. It was just so many things that we just couldn't really digest. And myself as a Black woman couldn't do it either. But I do know the responsibility of what it means to have information to pass it on. So I said, listen, I'm not going to be able to do individual, but what I can do is every night I'm willing to hop on Zoom and I will like help students with their college applications. And so every night I did that, and I did it, and I did it, and I did it. And it went from like, it was only supposed to be 20 students to there were days when there were 500 students that showed up in the Zoom call. And now I'm like coaching students on how to coach each other. I'm asking friends to come in and saying like, you're going to be in this breakout room, okay, in this breakout room when we get back together. And there will be days where I was like, no one's going to show up. It will be like a Saturday. And then I'm like, let me just log into the link, right? And I log in and kids are like, she's here. And I'm like, y'all are here, And so it was just a journey of that. And so now it's time for the world, COVID, quote unquote, ended. So I'm getting ready to prepare to pack up and leave. And students were devastated. And like, what about my younger sibling? And also someone finally mentioned to me, a parent of one of the students said, have you ever thought to put this on a platform to make it asynchronous? And obviously asynchronous, that word became like really a hot buzz during COVID. And so I said, you know what, let me see. And two things happened that I was pretty surprised. One, I felt really, really, I guess convicted would be the word. The high school that I worked at, we used a curriculum called Changemaker. And our goal for every single student in that high school was to not just have this transformative experience, because the high school is incredible, but it was to have this transformative experience so you can be better equipped to serve your local community after graduation. And it felt like I was in that position where I had a solution to transform my local community. And I was getting ready to make a decision to gallivant across the world, right? And do this and disregard my role in the solution. And so that convicted me. But I was like, you know what? I know I'm old. I need to call my mama. She's going to talk me off the ledge. And she's going to say, no, you should just go back to work. And she was just like, I think you should do it. And I was like, oh no, I called the wrong person. Like, somebody has to walk me back off the ledge. I can't quit my job. And she was like, Tiffany, you went to school. I was first gen, to go to college. And my parents are union workers, right? So they don't have as much flexibility to be able to like leave careers and, all this hopping around that I'm doing. And she said, you have enough skills to get back into the workforce. Like, you're a licensed therapist, right? Like, you've taught university psychology. Like, you have done lots of things, both like counseling, teaching on the high school and the university level. Like, you should do this. If it doesn't work, it's okay. And she was like, I'll even like be your secretary if you need someone. And I was like, Mom, I ain't got nothing, but okay, sure. And so I found 3 schools, which was incredible. They piloted the program. We had amazing data. 6 months later, they had, re-signed. I got into Camelback. And then we ended up in 22 states. And now we're like, continuously impacting. And there's some changes that we've done that we can talk about later. But that is the wild journey. And so some days I wake up and I'm like, I wonder what I got to do for work today. Like, I wonder what my boss sent me. And it's like, girl, you are the boss. And so it's like me to me, like, how did we get here? It's like, I don't know, like channel Issa Rae mirror moment where you're just like, how did we sign up? Did we sign up for this? Because I don't recall. It happened so quickly. But that's just what it is. But I think the growth of the organization speaks to the fact that that gap that we fill has never been filled in that way, in the most authentic way, from someone who actually inherently knows the students. And so, yeah, this journey is a surprise every day for me as it is for y'all. So just to know.
Oh my gosh, there's so many gems and nuggets that you just dropped within that story. The part about being convicted, is just like, and your mom coming in and saying to you, you have all of these skills. You're going to her thinking like, talk me off the ledge. And she comes in and she's like, she reinforces that conviction. I just feel like, that was the universe saying, we hear a lot of times from entrepreneurs, specifically social impact entrepreneurs, who talk about like, it's because the mission is bigger than me. It comes from somewhere. And I can't not do this because the impact is what's drawing me in. And I'm the person to make it happen. And I just think that is so beautiful. And obviously you are the person to make it happen, because look at you, you know, still making it happen, still making it happen. So that's so awesome. I didn't know all of that. You know, we've had many conversations. I didn't know all of that backstory. So it's kind of cool to hear even more, you know, the genesis of Uprooted Academy. I want to talk about, you know, this founder journey. We know is tough. It's hard. It's really, really hard to be an entrepreneur. And I want to talk about, you know, some of the challenges that you have faced along this journey. What have been some of those biggest challenges and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first challenge, I think most entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs of color, at least that I've impacted or been around, especially those who are doing social impact who might come from education spaces. I don't know if it's the same if you come from like more of a corporate background, you have a better understanding of this foundation, but money, right? Like, how much should you charge for your product? How much should you pay yourself? You know, all of those different things for me probably pose the biggest challenge. And I think I had to go through a lot of reflection and questions. Shout out to my coach, Scott, who I had during Camelback, because there was a couple of pivotal moments. Yes, he was great, as well as a board member of mine, Dr. William Johnson. He's great too. And both of them in very different spaces. You know, Dr. Johnson has a background in like superintendent role, and, you know, Scott has a background in business, and they both pushed me to understand my value of my product that I'm worth. And so at the time, in the beginning, like if I told you how much we would charge per student for our platform, you would probably like, you know, vomit just because it's so disgraceful, right? And finally, I had to do this activity from one of them that told me, walk to Starbucks and order this drink. And I'm not a coffee drinker. And so for me, I had to like I'm like, venti, okay, shots, like, oh, whatever the little lingo is at Starbucks, I did it. And the Starbucks drink costs more than my price per student. And they said to me, are you telling me that this is going to be as impactful, as life-changing as what you're doing for the student? Because that's what you're selling. And I still, it resonated, and I was like, oh snap, this is it. But it still was really hard for me to contextualize putting value on something I believe every kid deserved. And the shift that has happened over the last, year for me in my organization is really the resolve, my own internal resolve around that. But that was that. And then the next thing was money around how do you pay yourself, right? Like you read all this research and most founders don't pay themselves for like 2 to 3 years. And if they do, they're like below poverty line, right? Because it's just like, you have so many other things that you want to like fund, whether it's another person or a product, addition, whatever it is. And so money for me, the only reason why I decided a number that I felt was good was because actually a Camelback alum, we were just chit-chatting and I was like, hey, how did you pick this number? And he said to me this very clear statement. He said, Tiffany, your mission is clear and it needs to be long-term. God forbid if something happens to you, there's no CEO that's going to take that role for that amount that you're paying yourself. So in order to create a sustainable opportunity for this organization to keep going, you have to pay yourself something that someone else can step into if something happens. So put it as a line item, prioritize it. And that for me was humbling because he was right. I was willing to pay someone else a higher number for my own role than I was willing to pay myself. And so that was an eye-opener for me. But money essentially becomes the ecosystem of like fear. Whether you're asking for donations, it feels like you're begging, right? Especially because a lot of foundations and funders are not people that are folks of color. And so it feels weird. It's like this weird, thing. It's like, oh, I'm begging for money. I feel like a kid that doesn't have enough, right? And so it just comes at your core in so many different ways. But for me, that's probably been the most difficult part in this journey.
Oh my gosh, girl, you just spoke a word on paying yourself, because I can imagine so many founders who struggle with that tension. And then just that light bulb, at least for me, what was just so impactful in all of that was the fact that the revelation that you had around, I'm willing to pay somebody else more money to be the CEO and run this company, but I'm not willing to pay myself that. And then to realize like, oh no, that's not how that's supposed to work. That is profound. I hope whoever is listening that y'all took that down. If you were a founder and entrepreneur, make sure you write that down, put it on a sticky note, put it on your mirror, and remember that you are worth whatever that salary amount is that you would think you're going to pay somebody else. Make sure you're paying yourself.
Yes, yes. And having a really good board, having folks that, even I met with someone from a foundation who was like, that's all you need to raise? Let me see how much you're paying yourself. Like, nope, that's not enough. And so like, and I was a Black woman who I met through Camelback, and it was just like so helpful to have a team of people who value paying for your expertise and your services and want to honor you. Because I think historically, I always deal with this, right? Like whenever I tell someone like, oh, I have a nonprofit, immediately they don't think I'm getting paid. They're like, how are you going to live? Because I think in our community, like people call anything like helping the community a nonprofit. Like they don't really have no business model. They're not registered with the IRS. Like they don't have a 501c3. They're literally volunteering, and they just like throw it in the bucket of like, oh yeah, I got a nonprofit. It's like, you do? Like who's on your board, right? And it's nobody. And so unfortunately in our community, we have equated nonprofit with like struggle life or not getting paid, versus like when you look at other nonprofits that are out there from universities that are all nonprofits, like you got these huge foundations that are nonprofits, their CEOs are making sometimes $500,000. And that's just in salary, not in all these other gifts. And for some reason, when we pivot to ourselves and in this space, we come from this idea. It's like, oh no, we're just giving back. And that's synonymous with a nonprofit. But no, we have a business model. We have, we have things that we need to do and people to impact, and we need people and programs. And so, yeah, I find it really interesting anytime I say like, oh yeah, we're a nonprofit. They're like, oh, so you're not getting paid. And I'm like, oh no, like,
oh no, I pay myself.
We had to be a C Corp. Yeah, we had to be a C Corp in order to be a nonprofit. So no, we are fully registered. We pay all the things that we need to. But yeah, I think that's also a hard place in the community. So having people in the community on your team that they know you can pay yourself has been super valuable for me.
Yeah, and I wanted to point out too the valuing of the product. I know I feel like that is a tension point for a lot of folks. I have family members who are entrepreneurs themselves, and they're always asking like, how much should I be paying, or how much should I be charging for this product? And it's like, well, don't undercharge, because there's value in work and what it is that you're doing. And I can imagine that is a tough challenge to overcome, feeling like, oh, if I charge so much, people won't buy it.
Yeah.
But if I charge too little, like, how do I sustain?
Yeah, and it's interesting. Sometimes when you don't charge enough, people don't think it's valuable. They're like, oh, it's cheap then. Like if she's only charging that much, they don't really want it. It's a weird psychology of money that you have to tap into, with this space, both as a founder, as someone who's like putting out prices, but also understanding the consumer and the buyer, whether that's a community-based organization or a university or a high school. It's so interesting, that particular asset as well.
Absolutely. Well, I want to shift gears. You were talking about it a little bit when you mentioned Scott and then your board member, but I want to talk a little bit about your Camelback Fellowship experience. I had the honor of getting to actually meet you. You might have been one of the first founders that I got to physically meet in person through the fellowship. And so I want to ask, how has the fellowship impacted your growth as a founder and impacted the growth of Uprooted Academy?
I tell people this without batting an eye. If it were not for Camelback, your girl would be back at work somewhere else. I'd have been fine. I'd have been happy. But the world would not have this transformational impact if it weren't for Camelback. So Camelback believed in me, even sometimes before I might have even believed in myself, because I definitely was shocked that they called me. I also didn't realize, how senior some of the other founders were. So like, I feel very humbled that I was a part of that crew. And I think a lot of things, right? I think just having genuine support for me as a leader. irregardless, so Uprooted has changed its model from like, how we approach sales, what our outcomes need to be, but they're invested in me. So even like, for example, I got denied from like a fellowship a couple days ago. I text someone from Camelback and they were like, put me on the call on that meeting around, the feedback that this fellowship is going to give me. And so just having that. But in terms of the fellowship, the part that was like, people know that 4 months, even though for me, I've been out of the fellowship for over a year and I'm still just as connected. But for me, that fellowship got to me, and that I got to meet other founders, because founder journey is very lonely. It meant that I got to have like one of my like customers came from the fellowship. Like shout out to Natalie, like she got her students, our platform. And Natalie gave me good feedback. I was pitching Uprooted and she's like, let me hear it. And so I was like, sure. So I pitched to her, I gave it my all. And she was like, okay, Tiffany. She's like, I really like love your passion and I see what you're interested in. She's like, but I don't really know what my kids will get. And I was like, oh, well, what do you want to see? And she was like, show me the platform. I'm like, oh, that's easy. And literally after that call, because I don't know what other people are looking for, because how would I know? I'm new here. And so that little bit of social capital, after that, we had like a 65% conversion rate. Like if I got in front of the decision maker, they were getting the product because they wanted to see the product. Here I was like giving them the stuff I probably should have been giving like funders and, grant people. But no, I was just like doing the same thing. I didn't know the difference between pitch deck and, for like selling a product and a demo deck and a donor deck. It was just all me talking. And so, learning in the curriculum was really helpful. You got connected to other folks from alumni, from the panels. The capital was super helpful for me because it allowed me to market my product. So I use the money specifically to go to conferences, and I vended at those conferences, which are pretty expensive, but it allowed me to like rule out people that were not my real customer. Like, okay, like I really love this organization, but you know what? They're doing college access really well. And so that helps me to know that I don't need to like spend money on marketing to them, but I still want to be in the room. So now I could just go to the conference and not vend. That's a difference of like thousands of dollars, in case you're not familiar. But like that money was helpful for me. The reason why I scaled to those 21 states was because of those conferences. And I got to hire my first sales kind of caller to support me in like outreach. And so yeah, but like the mentorship, my coach, the expert bench, I'm not sure if people are familiar, but in the same way, like a basketball team has a bench of people who are just as good, they're just not getting a lot of game time because they're not needed as much. I can pull anyone from like accounting, legal, fundraising support. I'm in coaching now a year and a half later on how to build my board for sustainability. I'm in coaching now on how to learn how to fundraise at like, in a really good way using these experts. So I think for me, Camelback is a gift that keeps on giving, because like literally I'm still accessing their ecosystem, and they have been the only accelerator that has believed in Uprooted to this point, right? And so for that reason, I'm like super grateful and will sing all the praises to, Camelback.
Well, Tiffany, we absolutely appreciate and are so proud to have you part of the Camelback fam. I know for sure that you are one of the fellows that uses any and all of the resources as much as possible. And that's what they're there for. So we're very, very, very grateful that we can even be a part of your journey and support you, and just to know, like to see the growth that has happened and is continuing to happen, and to be a part of that journey. We're just excited to have you as part of the fam. So thank you for sharing all of those kind words and just being such a great rep for the Camelback fam, for sure. Yes. I want to shift gears now and talk about legacy. You are doing so much incredible work, and how, we mentioned at the beginning of this call, that Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action. That's a big deal. And so I want to talk about the legacy that you are hoping to leave behind with the work that you're doing with Uprooted Academy, and how you hope to change the education system for the better.
Yeah, great question. So I think there's a couple of things that I hope that I leave my mark in. The first thing is to really redefine how we get services and products to students. And so part of my journey through Camelback has always been this weird feeling of, in order for me to say I have a transformative product, I need to like go and pitch it to different individuals like schools or organizations. And then if they say not now, I need to withhold that product. And for folks who develop products and services out of a revenue model, they're like, okay, we're going to play the long game. But for me, every time I look at these students that I particularly like, we have a map of like where we want to be, who we want to reach, the type of student that we feel like will benefit the most. Those are all me. And so for me to have to like become the gatekeeper of my own product just doesn't feel good. And so I'm actually made the decision in February of this year that January of 2024, our platform will be completely free. And that was just studying the model of like Khan Academy, right? Like Khan Academy has this open platform for students to use, and guess what? They're using it, right? I think we're gone with the days that like in order for students to get something, it needs to go through like an adult, like a community center or that. Those adults are helpful if they want to come alongside, if they know that the students have the resource and they can point the students to it. But I refuse to be a gatekeeper in this process. And I really want us to look like deeply at how we are able to procure products and services without the end user's input on like what they actually need. It's happening at a higher level. So that's the first thing I really hope to do. The second thing I hope to do is, as I mentioned, my background is actually a clinical therapist. So licensed therapist, been doing the work. Social emotional learning is at the core of every single thing that we do at Uprooted Academy. So actually, it's a little bit sneaky, right? So I'm using college application, that journey from 9th through 12th, the courses you select, taking AP exams, taking the SAT, applying to college, right? What I really want to do is I want to facilitate students' ability to do academic risk taking. And the only way to do that is to retrain students' nervous system to recognize that to take an academic risk means it might be a little bit of discomfort, but it's not danger. And our nervous systems, if we can settle them, and in our platform, we have like mindfulness, we have, different affirmations that they can do. They have breath work that they can engage in. They have all of these different tools that supplement this process because it has to be a holistic process. We can't just solve for social capital without addressing the mental wellness component. Most of our students, even when they have the social capital, they know how to apply, their body's taking it as a risk and going into fight or flight. And what does that mean? They're procrastinating, they're opting out, they're under applying. It means that long term, our students are not going to be in the places that are set up for them to be successful. Whatever that place is, whether it's a job, whether it's moving overseas, whether it's an Ivy League, whether it's a community college, the nervous system needs to be trained that there is a difference between safety and comfort, right? Like we might be a little bit uncomfortable, but we're still safe. We should still be able to pass going, for like $200, right? But what's happening is our students are looking at applications, their nervous system is getting overwhelmed. And whenever it's designed to be overwhelmed, it's designed to shut down. And so for me, my hope is that the work that we do with Uprooted in teaching students these like mental well-being strategies is that they actually go even farther than what just the college application, because if they know how to self-regulate, then what that means is when it's time for them to take that hard exam in college, when it's time for them to apply to that internship that's only 1% are going to get in, they realize it's a little uncomfortable to think I'm going to get denied, but it's not dangerous. I can still move forward with it. Like they're going to take those hard jobs. That's the legacy for me. And not just a college degree, but we're using that because we know that's a good mirroring impact of students taking risks. And unfortunately, whenever we hear the word risk, most of our bodies get nervous, right? But like even something small, like in the platform, students learn the difference between anxiety and excitement. So oftentimes they say like, oh, I'm really, really anxious about applying to college. I'm like, anxiety is a prerequisite for danger. Tell me, let me know what danger is there. And maybe there is some, right? Depending on a student's identity and where they want to go. But for the most part, what they really mean is it feels a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm actually excited about the opportunity. But the physiological responses of anxiety and excitement are the same. And so students get confused. And if they register it as anxiety, they're actually going to stop the wheel from turning to do the thing they actually want to do. So their systems gets overstressed. And most of our students are powering through distress in order to find their dreams. And so for me, the legacy I want to leave is how can we wrap around polyvagal theories, a theory I use often, but even non-clinical approaches? How can we utilize those in assisting dream design, because kids are not able to grit through it. It's not about being intrinsically motivated. It's not about having the power to do it, because our nervous system is an autonomic system. It's automatically designed. If it's overwhelmed, it's going to shut down. And we've got to create capacity for students to have more, to be able to self-regulate when their body is starting to go through those motions, so then they can do the things they want to do. Because I inherently believe that most students are not doing the things they want to do, not because of the job market, not because of social media and being an influencer and being rich. They're just not doing it because their body's overwhelmed, and they're using that as a pivot in a way to feel safe. But they were actually never in danger. And so it's pseudo safe, and so we have to solve for that. That's the second thing. The third thing that I hope to do and accomplish in this work is to really have a systems thinking approach about how I'm designing it. So everything that we do is collaborative. We're doing it in a way that brings in partners, right? Like, if you have an amazing organization that does something amazing, we're not going to reinvent the wheel. We're just going to use your information and we're going to like blast it out. And so I hope to develop a synergy of collaboration in this space. I think oftentimes when you're applying for the same grants, it can feel very competitive, but also like challenging folks who fund things through grants and say, hey, I know you're asking me to add on this service, but if I do it, it's not going to be an excellence for students. And I think we just have to get back to a place where we are refusing to add on mediocre just to like, you know, appease funders. And funders need to be, you know, on base on with this as well, because otherwise students get mediocre. What they really need is, because our problem isn't simplified, they really need us to be able to be complex and working together and having collaboration with other people in this space. So that way students, whatever they encounter, whether it's me or if I direct them to you, I know every encounter is going to be excellent. And so that's the third thing I hope to leave as a legacy, using Uprooted as a tool.
Woo, girl. Tall order, but I'm here for it. Backing up that legacy. Let's go.
We got lives that change, okay?
Okay. We have impact that we need to leave behind. We have things to leave behind for these next generations of folks, these 7 generations that are coming after us. What you shared when you were talking about the just like the feelings of safety, and it, to me, like what was going through my mind is that what you're wanting to achieve sure is happening in the work of, you know, applying to college, but like that is a skill set, a tool that is applicable in life. It won't just carry them through the application process. It'll carry them through life, because, you know, there's going to be so many opportunities, job applications, you know, so many opportunities that come up in life where they're going to need to know the difference between like what is excitement versus anxiety, or when am I actually in danger versus, you know, and being able to process and work through that. Man, that was profound.
Yeah. And kids have to like have something to like pair it with, right? If we just teach self-regulation without an actual event, it's just a theoretical concept. And then whatever is not used, if we just understand how the brain works, it just gets stored away and not useful. It's the same thing why like financial literacy, I love the ones that like have them play the Wall Street game, right? Because they're actually using it in practice. When you just teach it in a silo, it just doesn't work. And so, yeah, we're using the train of that process, of the college application process, the whole journey of like applying to pre-college programs and taking the SATs and APs. We're using that as a way to say, hey, you're probably feeling this, let's use a skill. And so that's the way to help it become ingrained in our students.
Oh man, we're gonna have to talk afterwards, because my nephew is just entering high school, and I'm like, I got to make sure my guy is prepared. We are going to be using Uprooted Academy for these college applications, so that's beautiful. Well, I want to, you know, as we've talked about the beginning, we've talked about your journey, about the middle, and then, you know, what looked ahead to what it is that you were wanting to see, the change that you're wanting to make in the world. And we're kind of, you know, rounding out the conversation now. What's next? You kind of alluded to, you know, the changes that have been happening at Uprooted with, you know, moving towards a free platform for all. What's up next this year and beyond?
Yeah, so some great changes. So we are hosting a college fair in the metaverse, which is super transformative It's not your regular Google fair your Zoom fair where kids are coming in and it's like wonky where they're going into rooms. Y'all, that was because of COVID. Nobody was ready. But now we have like virtually immersive platforms like the metaverse where kids will go in, they'll see like the rooms. It's almost like they're sitting in a large auditorium. The booths for universities are set up in a way that look like they're there because it's meta. And it's so amazing for me because utilizing and building this resource in this way means a couple of things. We've always wanted to solve for time privilege, right? To be somewhere, even us having this call and me being able to block out this call is a privilege. Not our students have that. Sometimes they work, sometimes they're involved in activities, they might have siblings. And so the best part about our fair, which we have our like launch day, October 14th, we'll have exhibitors, including like College Board, Matriculate, National Black College Expo. We're giving away some waivers for Common Black College app, some Nike swag as well will be given out. And we're giving out $10,000 in scholarships. But the best part is that fair, that one day will turn into a showcase. So all of those universities will be within the metaverse. They will stay live with all of their tools, all of their resources, their videos, their links, their sign-up sheets for 90 days after the fair. So what that means is even if a student has to hop off early, even if a student wants to come back in, it's not like, dang, the fair has like moved away. Nope, they can get the same experience for 90 days. And so we're excited about that. Our new platform that's launching in January, we're moving away from our old, it's gonna have a whole entry point for parents. And it's going to have a lot more support for students and advisors. And so we're really excited. We have some like metaverse style rooms and like all these other things. So look out for that, but we're really excited. And then lastly, we've transitioned because we're no longer selling our product. We are moving into like grant, foundation, philanthropic support. And so if that's you and you're interested and inspired, please feel free to reach out because we are always looking to use money and it's going to be done well. Like we have really high impact, really high data and program outputs from our work. So you'll be in good impact company if you decide to partner with us.
Awesome. Awesome. Tiffany, this has been absolutely amazing. I am so excited to have had this conversation with you and to just hear about all of the incredible things that you're doing, your backstory, even more backstory than I knew beforehand. I want to make sure that people can connect with you. If they want to learn more about you, if they want to learn more about the work and support Uprooted Academy, if there are some parents on here who want to use Uprooted Academy to help their students in the college application process, more about the virtual college fair, where can people find you to connect?
Yeah, so everything is on our website. So that's www.uprootedacademy.org. We host like workshops, webinars weekly for students and parents. If you're a school counselor and advisor, monthly, we have a professional development for you. These are all at no charge. You can learn more about the fair, also free of charge. Parents come out, we have panels for you all. We have panels for students. So not just a college fair, but also a resource fair. And donors, you can also find everything on that website as well. Students, if you have TikTok, Instagram, you know, whatever else people use nowadays, we got that too. And then lastly, this version of our platform will kind of shift away starting in January. But if you have the like Apple or Google Play Store, you can download our app and join it for free and get a whole bunch of content on everything you need to know regarding the college application process and worksheets and activities and links and all the things.
Awesome. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, before we hop off here, I do love to just ask like kind of a fun question.
Okay.
And, you know, as we talked a little bit about mental health and just taking care of ourselves. And we know as entrepreneurs, it's tough out here. You know, you experience these really high highs and low lows sometimes. And I want to ask, how do you practice self-care, especially in those moments of low lows, and advice that you would share with other founders who are out here grinding it out?
I feel all my emotions. So I cry, I laugh, I am excited. I try to travel. I live in LA, so I go to the beach. Those are my things.
Awesome. So the moral of the story, y'all, we all need to move out to California and get near a beach and some water and sun. Awesome. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much again. Like I said, it's truly been a pleasure to have you. And we're so, so proud and so appreciative to have you as part of the Camelback fam. To everybody tuning in, as always, thank you guys so much for being here. As you know, we host these conversations every second and fourth Tuesday of the month. Our next conversation is going to be on October 3rd. So we don't have the guests lined up yet, but keep an eye out on our page. We'll be announcing them soon. Until then, you guys have an awesome rest of your day. Tiffany, take care, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.